Hello and welcome to this program that I, to be honest, have not yet named. I've received a lot of good ideas for it. This is
So
actually,
professional.
yeah, it's a very inspirational person with me today. This is a thing that some of you might be thinking, oh no, Burger, what are you doing? This is not the usual kind of video format you do, and that's true. A little bit about myself. Two of my greatest idols. One of them you might know is the documentarian Louis Theroux. He's made like documentary films about
Is it Theroux?
Louis Theroux, the guy who
No, I
was a
know. It's not a Thoreau, right? I always read it wrong, maybe.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's other guys with that surname, and I think they're somehow
Yeah, that's true.
related. Yeah, that's one of my inspirations in life, and the other one is a guy called Jürgen Domian, which the Germans among you might know. He was a, I mean, he is still. He doesn't do it anymore. He's still alive. A radio talk show host where he would just sit there, often late at night, and have people like call into his show and then talk to them, and they would be just regular people and there would some like strange conversations would ensue, and that is which is it's such a weird thing for like a teenager to sit in front of a radio and hear that and be like, that's what I want to do eventually. It's one of the things that I want to do, definitely. um and I
Instead,
always
you're just talking to fucking weirdos on the internet.
Yeah. And like,
Good job.
it's kind of the thing that for the longest time it didn't fit with my channel concept. If I like uploaded an hour-long video where I just talk to someone, but now more long-form video formats have been for like a year the stuff that I've been doing, and it's worked out very well. So I figure, why not give this a shot as like an additional type of content that I release every once in a while, intermittently. I don't have the resources to make a call-in radio show, but I do know a lot of very interesting people,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
that's the people I'm going to be talking to. And the first one is I'm going to try and do people that I know who are like regular people and people who I know who are like somewhat famous people. And today, to get that started, I have the perfect intersection of both of
no,
these
I'm
things.
not. I'm neither. I'm not regular nor famous. What are you talking about?
Internationally acclaimed superstar.
All right.
This is the
So,
gentleman that goes
welcome to the
by,
first and
yeah,
last episode of this.
goes by the name of Schizoid Angst. Is it actually? Do I know like your real name, like your first name? Was that ever like a thing that we said on stream?
I no. I mean, I've doxed myself multiple times, but no, I haven't done that like intentionally.
Okay, how would you like me to refer to you then?
Angst is fine.
Angst.
Angst.
Okay,
Everyone just
Angst.
calls me Angst. Yeah,
Okay,
and
Angst.
I'm gonna be a stickler because it's schizoid, not schizoid.
Okay, that's. Isn't that just my accent though? Is it? I'm gonna
No,
try and
it's
say it
skits as
correctly.
in schism
Huh.
because it's still in reference to though some people would like it not to be. It's
Yeah.
still in reference to the word schism as in schizophrenic
Yeah.
and schizotypal, so it's schizoid. But I don't give it. Whatever.
I
Just whatever.
didn't
You like knowledge.
know that
Giving it to
even.
you.
Like I have like like schizotypal symptoms, and I didn't know that
Yeah.
that's. I should just
Well,
now start using the word schism as like schism, just to say no, it's definitely my accent. I didn't say anything wrong.
well, maybe I don't know. I don't really care. I got hounded for a while when I first started, and then I finally got used to it.
Okay, so what is schizoid? Because we have never talked, you and I don't know anything
Oh
about
yeah.
this.
Oh, never. No one's
According to
okay. That's just
Wikipedia, it's something related to like a guy sitting on a bench. I
yeah. He's
can't
very sad.
read, so
No. Okay. Well,
that's all I
I'll
know
try
about it.
a layman's version of
Yeah.
what it's supposed to be. And if I start lagging or anything, tell me. But we could
Oh,
just do
you're
this shit
fine. You're
on.
fine. It's okay.
I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
So essentially, it just comes down to individual. Like if you look up the DSM or the ICD or anything like that, you're gonna have an individual that has a cluster. It's considered a cluster personality disorder, in which they isolate. Usually, they can go from being a hermit to someone that's outwardly charismatic and talkative, but inwardly hating every moment of it. They tend to be socially awkward. at least in accordance to the description. They tend to be uninterested or indifferent to the world around them, literally to people. They can't seem to connect to or have a feeling of a seeming inability to connect to other human beings on some kind of like what is it? Effectively empathetic level. There's a lot of descriptions. If you looked it up, it would probably you would probably just imagine like some person in a corner, like staring at the floor, like a guy on a bench,
Yeah, yeah.
doing nothing. But that's not what it's like at all. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, that's how it's generally described. And symptoms are well, the negative symptoms associated are things like anhedonia, volition, depression, anxiety. The great horsemen of the grand mental apocalypse, um, and so yeah. That's I mean, if you want me to get into certain specifics, I can, but I just don't. That's kind of a vague, general understanding of what it's supposed to be or present itself as.
I mean, you've probably given this talk a few times to people, I can imagine.
No, I have, and I don't mind. I will do it a million times over. So.
I know you've explained it to me like 4 times now.
Well, I mean, it's okay. I'm
yeah.
used to working with people that lack a significant amount of intelligence.
I mean, you are basically an educator in this field.
No, I'm just some idiot on the internet. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, most people are idiots on the internet. You know.
Well, that's true.
But yeah, schizoid kind of sounds like schizophrenia.
Okay.
But that's where it gets a little weird. It's not the same thing as far as I understand, because
no, it is not.
Why do they call it this?
Because it's in reference to the same term, which is schism, a separation between the individual in question and something else. In some cases, it's people. In some cases, they're referring to reality. In some cases, they're referring to their emotions, things like disassociation of the self. No core identity are oftentimes cited as being the issue with the schizoid. That's if you get into the literature more, it kind of tries to paint a picture of a person that didn't develop a sense of self for like either traumatic reasons or yada yada yada, psychoanalytic mumbo jumbo in many cases when it comes to this topic in particular. And so it's different than schizophrenia or schizotypal or any of that because it's not usually associated with positive symptoms such as delusion, hallucinations, and things of that nature, or usually also not associated with things like psychotic like symptoms or psychosis. Psychosis. It's not like impossible for that to happen. That actually happens more often than you would think, but it's generally not the case. They're generally not dealing with psychosis or positive symptoms, but they're dealing with all the negative symptoms associated with something like schizophrenia or schizotypal or schizoaffective, just none of the positive.
Which, I mean, in
and
this
for those
case,
that don't know, it means seeing shit versus feeling shit.
And also, the positive and negative is not like a value judgment. It's not the good symptoms.
No, yeah, a lot of people, when I say that, they think I'm putting a value judgment on it. But no, negative just refers to something that's more passive and internalized. Usually, positive refers to something more actively affecting one's perception or cognitive. And then there's like a third section, which is cognitive symptoms, right? So that is a general mix, depending on the individual, what's going on. I speak to schizoids that deal with everything from, say, memory lapse and things like alogia, which basically makes it really, really difficult for them to express their thoughts and feelings in words, like spoken word. They type, they sound amazing. So they can write incredibly well, but they can't speak. But you would think, oh, they can't speak, or they're shy, or they're unable to form cohesive sentences, or talk in detail about anything, which isn't true. It's like a cognitive sort of difficulty.
It's sort of they are severed from that then as well. That particular form of expression.
Well, I mean, for some, it just depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Not all schizoids deal with alogia.
I mean,
I think that's how you pronounce it. But most schizoids deal with anhedonia and avolition, That's kind of part and parcel, like
So
constant sort of anhedonia and evolution.
that's sort of the I'm not really I not really deriving pleasure from pleasurable activities, basically.
Anhedonia, yeah, like anhedonia means you're not getting pleasure from activities that you generally would get pleasure from. It's not like always persistent, but it might come in episodes. It might just come out of nowhere. When you're disassociated from a lot of your feelings, then large amount of stress might not feel like a large amount of stress at the time, and then your body's like, and your brain's just like, nope, and then it kind of tries to shut everything down, and including the good stuff because it kind of tries to numb you out from whatever pain or discomfort you might be actually dealing with or stress. And so you have these episodes for hours, if not days at a time, in which you really can't enjoy anything, even if you enjoyed it the previous day to some degree. Um, and then volition refers to the inability or the difficulty, severe difficulty with completing tasks that you start. So you might decide to start on a project and then go, I'm doing this. And then a bunch of stuff happens that, we can talk about if you want, but a bunch of stuff happens that chemical and otherwise that makes you just kind of give up and regret ever starting sometimes, or lose any kind of reward system associated to what you believed would provide one. So like, you might initially have some kind of dopamine action going for something. You see that dopamine, or you don't see it, but when you feel like that shit's not kicking off anymore, or halfway through it's not doing anything, you just give up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are things that also associated with depression. So I think a
Yeah,
lot
of
of people
course.
probably are able to empathize with those particular aspects of
Mm.
because then now I see this and I'm like, oh, I recognize
Yeah,
this. What if I could self-diagnose myself without the
yeah,
aid of
yeah.
a
No,
professional?
that's a problem. That's a problem always. But no, and it's not just depression. I can tell you that because for many schizoids, they will have these episodes or these moments without any kind of particularly distressful event occurring, or even during times in which they should be feeling better or good, because say good things are happening. So if good, even if what would be considered good things are happening around them, they might still be dealing with the same situation.
Yeah. Something that seems to be pretty core to the whole experience is seems to be this sort of lack of a sort of internally developed identity or personality. I know you use the like masks metaphors a lot, where you
Mm,
like
that
everybody
that's
wears masks to a certain extent in society.
yeah. Was the code switching on?
Yeah, yeah.
It's referred to code switching, I think, or something like that.
But
Like that's
again,
what
like,
everyone does.
correct me if I'm wrong, but as from in our previous conversations, from what I understand this to be sort of the case is that in this case, there's really not. I mean, there definitely is something behind that mask. It's just not like a consistent thing that the
That's where it
person
gets
itself can
dodgy.
grasp. Yeah,
That's where it gets really dodgy because there's a difference between how it's described, like I said in the literature, and how it actually is experienced by many of the people that go through it. So when you're talking about schizoids more specifically, it's similar to the type of masking, say, autistic people do, which is I can't connect to this. I don't relate to these things around me. I don't understand what's motivating people around me to participate in this or this particular social thing or that social thing. But I know there's expectations of me, and so I have to find a manner in which I to adapt to set expectations. And so then I develop a mask, right? So that mask is usually some kind of persona. Sometimes a charismatic individual. Sometimes somebody increases their affect when it's like essentially false. Like they would normally be more stationary or stoic in their affect, but um, they know that that's a problem. Like they just intellectually understand, like, oh, if I don't do this or I don't do that, it's going to cause me difficult problems, and so I should, and I'm going to have to. And so then they do,
affect.
but
By the way,
unfortunately,
for those who don't know, affect is like the tonality of how you speak, like how many different sort of maybe emotions is
and your
probably a good word to
face,
say.
in your face too.
Yeah,
It's not
in your
just like your
face.
voice; it's your face, like smiling
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
laughing and smirking and things like that. Like it's not like that. Those never come to me ever. Like they obviously do, but in a lot of situations, that I'm not interested in and I can't connect to, they're not really coming to me. But I know that they're important for people, because otherwise they think you're weird or threatening or disrespectful or arrogant, or a variety of things that are untrue. And then the tonality of your voice, obviously. I have a lot of, I guess, affect or fluctuation in my voice, so I don't have that issue. But I know I speak to schizoids that have what is considered to be a flat affect, and so they'll speak more like this, and the words will come out like this, and this is how I speak all the time. Like it'd be a little bit closer to that.
Yeah.
Um, so and of course that comes with a lot of social consequences, right? And because of that, masking is developed. Similar, like I said, to autistic people who do the same for very similar reasons. It's not like it's a lack of stimulating information or interesting information or motivating information being provided by social situations. In most cases,
But there are things that do sort of that interest you, right? There is the
yeah,
interesting information exists out there in the world.
yeah, but it's usually not provided by people.
Yeah.
At least not. I mean, it's provided by people as in they create it, but it's not provided by people as in like it happens in what would be a conventional social situation. So I thought this is kind of what you mentioned, like, oh, there's nothing there, there's missing. A lot of schizoids will come to that conclusion after many many years of basically having a personality or developing or attempting to develop as a child a personality inside of themselves that just isn't really congruent with their what some people would refer to like a neurotypical environment or framework. And so they'll grow up and they'll go, oh, I like this, or I'm interested in this, or I have these questions and I have those questions. That they're not thinking about it consciously, especially as kids, but they'll have a certain way of intuitively thinking about the world and things. And thing oftentimes leads to conflict, confusion, distress, uh, rejection, and the vast majority of the time, it's unintentional, right? There's no malevolence behind it. It's just, you know, parents don't know, teachers don't know. The society that, the village that's raising, what do they call it? It takes a village to raise a child or whatever. The whole village is essentially
Yeah.
going, well, this kid's odd. Um, and so after a while, you basically just start disassociating from what is developing, right? And so you end up at a point where it feels like nothing is there, like there's just a void, when in fact there could have been something there, or there is something there. You just disassociated from it over the course of a difficult lifetime. And for me, I've discovered that more and more in the last few years. At 38. All right, so it took me till I was in my 30s or mid 30s to start developing a sense of self that actually made sense to me. That wasn't just an amalgamation of special interests um, that I was just kind of motivated by, like hobbies and interests and stuff, but to developing a connection to like other people and things like that. So
Could you describe maybe the difference between like a special interest making up a building block of your personality and these other ephemeral elements that you've been sort of discovering,
I
finding
like,
these past few years?
because it's more like a collection of distractions and a collection of entertaining things that might provide some level of happy chemicals that are temporary, but it's more of a, like I said, it's more of a distraction than a building of what feels like, or an identifying of what feels like a totally cohesive self at times. So I would jump, like, internally, I would jump from like philosophy to philosophy, idea to idea. I dabbled from everything from the occult to the highly esoteric philosophical meanderings of some person or another, believing in odd conspiracies and things like that in my early 20s, and a variety of things of that nature, because I just could not find anything that felt real to me. And I would find something that was very temporary and short lived, and it was more of a novelty. So I would jump from novelty to novelty, um, unable to like feel as much as I knew other people were capable of feeling. right? And connecting to things the same way for a long time, to, how do I put this? My sense of like self and identity, as people like to could describe it, right?
Yeah.
But I was able to connect emotionally to a lot of this distractions, right? From that thing, I was able to connect to characters, tropes, ideas, narratives, concepts, all sorts of stuff that mattered to me, but didn't generally matter too much to the world on a practical level. Um,
So, would you say that those things served as sort of like mirrors, so examples that you then might have been able to use to trace a path to the things that actually did make up your personality?
that was the attempt.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the attempt I was working very hard at,
Ah,
and
okay,
it
okay.
caused me much heartache and many problems, and burnt a lot of bridges over the years. Not in any kind of, because when I'm talking about schizoid burning bridges, usually because they're ghosting or
Yeah,
disappearing,
yeah.
or they regret the interaction and so they stop. Um, nothing actively malevolent or malicious. Uh, I would say that a lot of my principles, ideas, philosophical conclusions developed from all those interests, all the special interests over the years, nerdy and otherwise, mostly nerdy. And But I like it felt like I was living outside of myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I was playing a character in a game or something, and I was controlling them, I was puppeting them, but it wasn't actually me. And so uh, I would, well, I don't know. I don't know how much you want me to ramble because I have a million things to say. So,
Ramble as
and,
much as you please.
okay,
I have a few points of
okay,
like a thing here,
yeah,
but you're
yeah.
kind of
Stop me
hitting
at
the
any point.
notes as we're
I
going along.
Okay. That's what I do.
That's why I picked
So I'm
you as
very
my first guy to sort of interview because I knew you could just go
That
on and
because you're hot,
on and it
and
would
because
work.
you kept DMing me for nudes. But
No, that's a separate thing. You don't
okay,
need to.
cool.
I'm
Edit
going to
that out.
edit this
I don't want to get in
out.
trouble. You gotta edit that out. Okay. So as far as like that's where it gets weird. So my my kind of like it's like a personality that I was developing inside of myself, but I couldn't like emotionally connect to because of the trauma that. And a lot of this is armchair, a lot of this is my opinion because it's just that's a whole nother can of worms. But because of this disconnect I've had since I was a child to the world around me, and the dissociation that comes with that, and the trauma that comes with feeling that way all the time, and then of course other forms of trauma. I dealt with all kinds of shit. There would be considered more conventional forms of child trauma and shit like that. And so you combine a lot of these factors, and then you just end up with a person that just can't connect a lot of their feelings to what they do in life. And then you add on top of that the factor of your type of your kind of neurodivergent thinking is you're in a world that feels very unintuitive and confusing and frustrating, and unrewarding in most cases. And yeah, you end up with a person empty inside most days. And I don't think most people feel very good that way. So, the negative
Yes.
symptoms in association to that will, extensively grow over time, and so on and so forth, right? A lot of schizoids don't. If you go even on Wikipedia, it says prognosis poor, right? It's just that's literally what it says. Is prognosis poor, because there's just an assumption even within the psychiatric community that there's just like, oh, there's no cure for this. They're just going to be this. They're just going to have to mitigate and like their functionality to a certain point until they just die some like empty life or something.
This is
Like
actually
it's just
something
it's
Yeah, this is something that I actually wanted to talk with you about. I think that might be the can of worms you mentioned earlier. I do want to open it.
Yeah, it's a big can of worms.
Yeah, because I feel
Your
like
your your mouth is lagging a little on my side. Is it affecting your recording?
well, you are lagging a little bit sometimes, but
Oh shit.
it's fine. Everything you say, I think, is very understandable. Like
Okay, good.
there's no
I'm
significant
just hoping
problems.
there's no crazy lag. Okay,
No, no,
cool.
no, no.
Okay, cool.
It's the whole thing that you do because I get the impression that we when we first talked a couple of years ago, you were very you had just started building like a community of
Mm.
schizoids, which is
Which for a lot of schizoids out there, they're gonna hear that and they're gonna go, "What the fuck?"
which is a
It's
massive
it's like an
oxymoron.
it feels like an oxymoron, but it's not.
Because that feels and that has apparently just the because I as I understand it, these would not be people who would inherently seek each other out and connect to each other because of like the
No,
very nature
absolutely not.
of the condition, and then the fact that you did this created a space of people who can relate to each other, and you are all together now exploring aspects of schizoid personality disorder that
But also
the
just ourselves,
yeah
like
yeah
our ability to connect to one another in some non-invasive, non-intrusive manner, non-overwhelming, non. The word it's often used is enveloping, consuming. There's a word for like being consumed, overwhelmed.
uh
Uh,
cannibalized
no, that's a good one though.
vor
Um, no, it's not vor. Getting bored. No, I don't know. Anyway, let's just go. Keep going.
yeah
I'll
but
think of it at some point.
just the fact that you were able to talk to like-minded people seems to have actually put into question many of the opinions held, and I mean opinions held by experts, of course, but opinions nonetheless of the clinical psychology community, where a lot of the assumptions that were made, a lot of the insight that was gained from the research into like mostly isolated schizoid individuals seems to have been pulled into question through this type of community that you
Yeah.
have created around yourself, or around
Well,
the seed crystal of the self.
yeah. It's put into question not just for myself over the last few years, but for the people that get involved more deeply in the server. Collection of many of which are diagnosed themselves. Some of which can't afford to be diagnosed. Others that were misdiagnosed with, say, something like autism, or what was referred to before as Asperger's or high functioning autism. But they basically try to take part in the autistic community, and they're like, I can't connect to any of these people. This is not my community. And then they show up here, and then they're like, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. What's happening in a way that didn't make sense to anywhere else. So what's happening is that these people, when they start mingling to whatever degree that they're comfortable with, because our it's a server. It's called the Zoid Void. It's on Discord. Welcome to join.
Should I
But
link it down below in the description? Would you think that's a
yeah,
good
I'll send
idea?
you. I'll send. Yeah, I would say yeah. I'll send you the links and stuff for
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and so they show up there, and a lot of them are initially like very like or this is probably gonna be stupid, or this is gonna be like everything else, and like we're just like, okay, like whatever. And then a lot of them are lurkers. I would say the vast majority of the people are lurkers, but I get messages from lurkers all the time. Like they'll send me a message and be like, oh, I've been here for 6 or 7 months, just lurking, and it's like had a significant improvement on my mental health. And just seeing this stuff, even though I haven't like, or they lurk for a few months and then they like feel brave enough to talk, and then they do because they see how openly everyone else with various issues, be it certain types of anxieties or affect issues or tonality issues or whatever, hedonia issues, whatever, and they see that people are openly talking about it. The few that are more actively speaking, and then that kind of makes them feel like, oh, I can talk about this, right? I'm not strange. I'm not weird. I'm not broken. Um, so another thing that is brought into question is the reasons for it. itself, right? And man, like I said, this is a whole thing, but the reasons for it are kind of, I think, more associated to what I was talking about, being a neurodivergent kid, a schizo kid, as I like to say, or a schizospectrum kid that isn't dealing with positive symptoms, but dealing with a certain type of abstract-based sort of recognition that is almost, I wouldn't say the opposite, but almost, I don't know, I don't even know what I would call it. The other side of what seems to be a lot of the manners in which autistic cognition seems to pattern recognize and focus on, which seems usually to be associated with detail and concrete information about the various special interests or interests in general that they have. And it's not just based around those interests, it's based around just their everyday life. They have to actually use metacognition as well as their executive function, or what's the word? I think it's executive function to actively try to not be just stuck in that kind of concrete sort of pattern recognition system, because it's just not functional to their everyday life, right? They just be in the details of whatever interests them all day, all the time, because how are you gonna, eat and do other things and stay clean and all sorts of other factors that might not be your priority, but are a requirement of the society you inhabit. And so, in the same way, I think that a lot of schizo peeps are essentially uh, abstract pattern recognizers. So it's like conceptual stuff, ideas. A lot of the times, what people refer to as like meta stuff, meta concerns, meta thinking, and it's not like, oh, it was so big brained. It's just it's that it's intuitive for a lot of us, and it's all the time, right? It's almost like the one of the things that's often to things like schizotype or schizophrenia, or especially something like paranoid schizophrenia or schizoaffectivity, is that there's a lot of loose associative or disorganized thinking, right? Uh, it's often the reference: loose association, disorganized thinking, loose association. So, what's funny is that loose association is in reference to getting what are perceived to be very vague concepts and then making connections between them that and then the problem becomes when those connections feel so real that you start off basically living your life around them actively, right? And the problem is that in a society in which such concerns are not of primary importance, primary importance concerns are generally like interpersonal and resource accumulation or gathering, things like that. You end up with an individual that seems to be making connections that everyone else is going, that doesn't make sense. Or why does or why is that even worth our time?
Like
Um,
stepping on the cracks, and when you step on the cracks, then father comes with the belt, basically. That kind of thing,
well,
I
I
think,
mean,
can be
that's
very.
one. Well, I mean, but that's like a big jump.
Yeah,
But
of
like,
course.
I would say like a smaller jump would be um, seeing something on the news, thinking about how it connects to the products that you have, thinking about how that connects to a different event or a different idea, and then making those connections, and then start making decisions about your life based on those kind of loose connections, like whether they're philosophical or scientific or spiritual, right? There are some tangential connections there, but but there's a difference between people that like a regular person that has to sit there and kind of think about it, like they're actually sitting there actively thinking about these things, and somebody that just intuitively does it, like
Yeah.
without any kind of prompt, in fact, to the point where it makes what are conventionally understood everyday tasks difficult, because they get lost in thought, they get lost in this or that. They don't, like, they'll skip lunch because they're stuck in a rabbit hole of some kind.
Yeah.
They won't do their homework. They won't go to work, or they'll be late to work, or that all sorts of things that would make everyday life in most, I guess, societies now very difficult.
Yeah,
So
I can relate to like some of the concepts in that whole thing.
Yeah,
Like the drawing loose associations between things and like seeing the meta patterns and stuff much more easily
yeah.
than like the details. For instance, I'm very very easy remembering like complex networks of information and seeing patterns in things. But then
We
it's
watch
like,
your videos. We know.
yeah, when it comes down to like the individual details, it's very difficult for me to like
I mean,
separate very
you can
similar
do it, but
monads
you
of
have to
information.
like sit there and do it.
Yeah, you
Like
have to
it's like
think
an
about it.
active.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
And what I'm saying is that for like the details, the devil's in the details, let's say, but the details and the pattern recognition of a lot of like very deep details would be something that's a lot easier for a lot of autistic people,
yeah,
especially when they're even if they can't verbally express it, say they were considered low functioning because of sensory issues and other stuff, they're still doing these things very actively. And I feel as if the people on the schizo spectrum are essentially doing the other side of this. And then most people, the vast majority of neurotypical individuals, are kind of somewhere in between, right? So I feel like schizospectrum people, autistic people, are just cognitive outliers of what the human brain already does, right? The human brain is already wired to go very abstract thinking or to go very concrete thinking, right?
yeah, yeah.
But it's usually something that a person makes a conscious decision to lean into, right? But their general state is going to be somewhere in the middle, somewhere there. And but for these people, there are these outliers where that state, state, right? So just abstract, loose associative thinking, not belief, but thinking, is my natural intuitive state. I'm comfortable there.
Like the
Right?
frequency of how these things are thought about is like shifted to one side or the other. I feel like.
Yeah, like my normal is different,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
My normal cognitive experience is going to be very different, and I think that's one of the few things that separates, say, something someone that's considered schizotypal, uh, or more delusional, and someone that's schizoid, which is generally not, is that it is more of a belief factor, right?
yeah.
So and ability to kind of sparse out certain details, and then go. But that's kind of what causes a lot of the depression too, in my opinion, because as somebody that's schizoid, I will see oftentimes a lot of these things, and I'll be thinking about them and whatever. But I'll go, well, there's nothing I can do about that, and the world doesn't care about that, and the world's not concerned with this or that. They're more concerned with these things, and now I want to die. So,
Yeah, yeah, is
like, so
the constant disappointment
it,
in reality. I think at some point you
yeah,
called it in
it
a
kind of
different
fucks you
conversation
up,
we had.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
on
yeah,
top of that, even when your more base needs are you're disassociated from them, or like maybe this is what's funny. Like a lot of people say, oh, schizoids don't want the interpersonal, they don't love, they don't want romance. A lot of them are asexual. Yeah, they would probably consider themselves a lot of those things. But what's funny is that when you start actually talking to them about, okay, what does romance mean to you? What does friendship mean to you? What does love? What does camaraderie mean in your mind? Right? Not what you've learned it's defined as, right? And a lot of the times when I ask them these questions, especially when they haven't contemplated it that way, they go, "Wait, what? Like I can do that?" Right? It's like because they have concepts of what they wish things were like or what matters to them, but they never actively pursued them, or they just essentially eh, almost like fell into a state of learned helplessness, right? Of just like, oh well, this stuff doesn't exist, so why think about it? Why even feel anything about it? The things that would actually motivate me or would actually affect me don't exist
So it's
in this
ultimately
world. It's not.
like only the masks, basically, and then you never look at what you
Well,
need.
not
Of course, not
everyone, but
everyone.
for a
Yeah,
lot of the people, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
obviously unique examples, but in most cases, that's often what I hear described. And so when I tell them, what would you like friendship to be?
Yeah.
And they can sit there and describe why they can't connect to people, why they don't like what is considered to be friendship. for a variety of reasons, like the what motivates them, the way people talk to each other, the expectations that people have for one another, generally socially, when a word like friendship is brought up, or or relationship. Let's just in general, let's just go more vague, relationship. And so then I asked them, okay, so what would you want? And then they go, I would want this, right? It would be something more akin to, like, say, parallel play, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
So like parallel play, parallel like communication, respect of agency, to the point where both people don't have to feel like the other be there for the other one to function. And like a lot of these sort of things like that. And they don't. That doesn't mean that they won't be there. It's just the need for it, right?
Yeah.
And so they'll describe that sort of thing, and then I'll say, oh, well, that's possible. You can do that. It's just unlikely because that's not how most people function. But it's possible in the community I'm trying to build, and with the right types of. It's not impossible. The internet has basically made it so that schizoids, or people that are on the schizo spectrum that would normally be isolated, they can actually find each other to some degree. And
And
so once they do find each other and they both have a similar understanding of what friendship should look like, or what feels intuitive to them, or friendship, all of a sudden you have schizoids that are dating. All of a sudden, schizoids that are saying they made their first friend in, like, 20 plus years of their life.
it is.
So
You can also then like actually communicate these needs to other people, and like
well, it's possible, but it's
yeah,
really difficult, right? Because
yeah.
if you communicate these needs to other people, those needs are so unintuitive to the average person that they're going to look at it, and it's just a cough drop.
Yeah, this
They're
is
going to
fine.
look at my throat's hurting. They're going to look at that stuff and either consider you to be odd, or confusing, or disrespectful, or insensitive, right?
Yeah,
Like, like, for example, let me give you a real simple example. If I go to a funeral, actually, this kind of happened recently. So if I go to a funeral, like let's just say, what do they call it, a wake, right?
yeah. I think
It's a better
that's
open
the
casket
term.
thing. When they have the open casket thing. Okay, so I'm sitting there on the chair, and you obviously have family members crying over here. All these things happening, right? And I'm just kind of sitting there, very just quiet. I'm listening to the priest say their things, and everyone's very, very sad for a lot of interpersonal reasons. All right, because they were close to this loved one that died, and that makes them sad, or they have family members that were close, and seeing their family members sad makes them sad.
Yeah,
And and the tragedy of it all, and how it's going to affect the family, how it's going to affect other people, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying whatever as in like it's unimportant. It's just I want to move on. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm not sad about any of that stuff really,
yeah,
except for in the case of like somebody that's like really, really close to me, like say my wife or something. Then that makes me sad in an interpersonal fashion. But generally speaking, the interpersonal aspect of what's so sad about this death, this wake, this event, this ritual, isn't what I'm sad about. What I get sad about, and even if I'm not actively expressing it, and that's my own issue, right? Because I feel like it can't be expressed, because I feel like if I express this, it would be considered inconsiderate or insensitive or not the point, and so forth. Um, what I get sad about is seeing a bunch of people act a certain way, basically be consumed by concepts like mortality, losing that which you took for granted. A lot of these ideas that come, the pain that comes with death and loss, and then I see people around me behaving in a certain way, saying certain things, in remembrance of this person, and behaving more close to one another. Let's just say, more kind to one another than they normally might be,
mm,
because of this facing of mortality, right? And so in my head, I get sad because I know it's going to revert, right? I know it's going to go away. I know it's temporary. I know that the next day or the next few days, they'll revert right back to not contemplating these things, not taking something like mortality into any major account um, when it comes to their later decision making, right? And their later emotional decisions and philosophical, and that depresses the shit out of me. Um, because I just go, look, you are being faced with mortality. It is a difficult prospect, and all of you are acting in ways that um, I would say a more pessimistic part of me, or cynical. I'm not sure. Would say that they're all just faking it. They just want to go back, but I know that's not true.
Yeah.
They're feeling. It just makes me very sad that it's temporary, and not the sadness, but the ideas behind it. Right, the kindness that's actually being expressed, and the understanding and tolerance that's suddenly appearing in the death. So and that makes me sad. That depressed the shit out of me for like 2 days.
There is a very interesting sort of irony here that you, on one hand, like feel disconnected from like the web of interpersonal relationships that
Hmm.
most people like constantly carry with them, but at the same time, in like a more abstract way, really care about the how the people
Yeah,
that are within that network are like kind and nice to each other, and that like that
hmm
won't be happening is
and
something
then
that
won't be
then
happening, and
yeah
then it
yeah
just goes beyond that, right? Just and then it turns into if I'm really spiraling, it turns into like the human condition,
yeah
civilization as a whole, is how it functions on a
yeah
meta scale, and this is how it's going to keep functioning. And so then that's when a lot of stuff like the evolution can be associated, or the anhedonia can kick off because you get really overwhelmed and you just want to go numb.
yeah
Because and then it doesn't help that you don't have any people generally to actively express these thoughts and feelings, and so then you don't get any, because that's what people generally use other people for when they're in distress. They use them for mood regulation,
yeah
right? So use your friends, your family, your loved ones to regulate your mood.
yeah.
Have access to mood regulation. Guess what? You're gonna just fucking numb out, or your brain's just gonna go, well, I don't know what the fuck to do with this. Okay, numb.
'Cause
Like it's gonna
you're
try to save
overwhelmed.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you have no outlet.
yeah,
You have you have no one to hold you metaphorically, even, and feel experience what you're experiencing. And there's no kind of it's difficult to learn to like something like affective empathy when you've never experienced it the other way.
what is affective empathy?
Okay, so affective and cognitive empathy are separated as one is, I guess, one is like thinking about why something is painful
Hmm.
that someone is experiencing, and then making a conscious, like, non-intuitive, it's just a decision of this is wrong, this shouldn't happen,
Yeah,
pain is bad, right? I know pain, I have pain, other people's pain, it must be similar to my pain, so thus pain is bad, so on, right?
yeah,
It's just kind of like intellectual process that would require kind of a way of morals and ethics sometimes, right?
yeah,
Affective empathy usually means the more intuitive kind, where you see someone in pain of a specific kind, and then you go, oh, I feel the pain they're feeling,
yeah,
right? Like it's not, I understand that it's pain, and so I want to actively help. It's, I feel what they're feeling, and emotionally, like their pain is being emotionally transferred to me. And so if do you know what I'm saying?
yeah. I
Like
mean,
it's just kind of,
this is how I think most people experience it. How I certainly experience it. That I see it in other
mhm,
people, and then I feel it
mhm.
within myself. Um,
Yeah, and so you feel it, and right, and that can lead to good things, good outcomes, and bad outcomes, right? Because then you get people that call themselves empaths, and
yeah,
unfortunately, what they're doing is they're oftentimes projecting their own emotions about what they're witnessing onto the person that's actually like experiencing it, right? So they might think the wrong things. So somebody might see me crying, right? Or not that it happens too often, but somebody might see me crying, like my mother or a sibling or something when I was younger, and they might assume that I'm crying over things that to them, but I'm actually crying over something entirely different.
yeah,
And so then it's an even bigger issue when you go to your therapist and you tell him devastated or feeling actively like destroyed by this concept, this idea, right? This thing I witness or this idea I keep thinking about and obsessing over. And then they think, oh, well, the only reason you're concentrating on that is because there must be some really deeply hidden interpersonal reasons that you're covering up with, or, you know, so like the reason you're depressed isn't it's because mom and dad or siblings or you got diddled when you were a kid. I can say that because I did, and you know how it works now, um, and and so then a lot of these people that are like this, they get gaslit into thinking, oh, well, it must be those things. The actual things that I'm actually like, what's the word? There's a word. Uh, egocentric, egodystonic.
Yeah.
So the egocentric feelings I'm having regarding these kind of what would be considered eccentric or idiosyncratic concerns
Yeah.
are not real. In fact, this is real. And so then they start forcing themselves into a corner of doing the things that their therapist is telling them to do, like go out more, socialize more, do this more, go touch grass.
Yeah.
And they go do it and they just feel worse and worse and more. And then when they feel worse, they start going, what the fuck's wrong with me? I'm broken.
Yeah.
This will never work. I'm giving up. I don't want to do anything. I'm going to stay in my home and not go out and not do. I'm going to just work some job at night and then never talk to anyone and sit there and play my video games or read my books.
I mean, you expect the therapist to help you with it, and then ultimately they just make you put on a new mask.
Well, and that's because they don't know. Right?
Yeah.
I don't have any kind of active hatred. Like I know, and I can actually totally respect that for the psychological community when they're schizoid like this, because it's in many cases has done them so much more harm than good.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's not an issue, in my opinion, of some kind of sheer malevolence or on the part of the psychological or psychiatric community. It's just this misunderstanding, this fundamental misunderstanding. And the way sorry, fucking cough drop. The easiest way of being able to explain this, that I think your listeners might be able to grasp real easy, is okay. We all know somebody, or we're all familiar with somewhat to some degree about autism, right?
Yeah.
Or autistic people, right?
Yeah.
We understand that autistic people have a cognitive difference that's it's just innate to their experience, and the way they experience the world, and in a variety of ways, right? It isn't a personality disorder. It isn't, and nowadays, I finally started talking about it as not being a mental illness, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not saying these people are ill, not saying these people have a personality disorder. Okay. They're saying they're experiencing the world in a fundamentally different way, and we should just understand that that's just a part of what comprises human society, even if it is a small part.
Yeah.
But there is a value in it, and there's something important that we can get from those people. Okay, we have that understanding. Now imagine you're going to treat an autistic person for depression.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you going to treat an autistic person for depression or a panic disorder in the same way that you would a neurotypical person? Using the same methods, using the same talking points, using the same strategies?
This sounds like a question to which the answer is no.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you think? I'm asking your opinion.
From your tone of voice, I have anticipated
yeah. Well,
what you expect of me.
even
I'm
if you
putting on
disagree,
the
you can
mask.
disagree with me.
No, I agree
disagree
absolutely. It's you need to.
No, that was legitimately
yeah.
that was legitimate frustration. I'm not masking at all.
No, I would be in this
Oh,
case.
okay. So yeah. So that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
so that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah,
If somebody has a cognitively different experience as to what affects their emotional range, why the fuck would you approach them with the same kind of therapeutic lens or psychological lens as somebody that's neurotypical or not autistic at all,
Yeah.
right? And it just doesn't make any sense. And so I'm positing that you're doing the same thing to people on the schizo spectrum.
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
variety of ways, right? I don't think that the emotional disassociation and all the same reasons for the negative symptoms that say schizotype or schizophrenic person is dealing with are the same as a schizoid, right? I think that the whole like sort of manner in which the schizoid is managing or dealing with their schizospectrum stuff is fundamentally different than say the way somebody that would be considered uh, schizoaffective would, right? They have different concerns, they have different approaches, but and different feelings about different stuff. But I think fundamentally, one of the major problems is just the manner in which this therapeutic community is approaching neurodivergent people, as far as how they do things like CBT, DBT, and other forms of commonly used therapeutic practices.
I feel like this falls into a larger point of the most of the experiences with like the clinical psychology community, most of the insights that they have gained, not just from schizoid people, but also from people with other sorts of neurodivergence, was often made in like with an additional noise of them being lonely for not having a lot of people to connect to that have similar experiences in their lives, and also seen through the lens of, okay, how can we make these people function in like neurotypical society?
Yeah, and that becomes a primary focus, right? The primary focus is how do we deal with the symptoms so that they could function in the framework that's already established,
Yeah,
instead of wondering, what kind of can we make a little room? Is there something valuable in this that we could? Because like it is my opinion that if these cognitive outliers were to be integrated and used to their full potential, there would be a net gain for humanity and human progress, not a net negative, right?
yeah.
It wouldn't be charity. It wouldn't be just doing it for humanitarian purposes. I think there is something very useful uh, as to why autistic and schizospectrum people exist, and then we'd get into a whole topic of like evolutionary psych sort of argumentation for that
I
and
mean, stuff
why
like
those
that,
outliers
roles like
exist.
that have existed historically in like various
Yeah,
societies. You have like shamans and what have you.
and very autistic roles as well
Yeah, yeah.
that have
What was the
existed throughout
garden
society.
hermit?
Well, the garden hermit, yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
garden hermit was a thing, but that was weird because like the garden hermit could have been like schizoids or that like took advantage of a pretty. They were already hermits and they got found in a cave, and then they were like, "Hey, you're gonna be my garden hermit now," and they basically told them you have to, or they would tell them, "Hey, you're gonna get food, shelter, water, and be left alone." Generally speaking, in exchange for the services of occasionally entertaining my party guests with your eccentric thoughts and wisdom.
yeah.
So, like, essentially, it's like they kept a if they kept a burger or me in a cave, and then they give us all the books and treats that we wanted, and we got to be like in nature or something. And then occasionally, random people would walk into your cave, and they'd be like, "I wish you to help me with this problem about this part of my life,"
Yeah.
and then you start just referring to things you read in your literature and everything else. Like part of their
Because
job was to stay educated and
yeah,
up to date with
it's
information.
part of this the ability to connect all of these various different concepts can
Yeah,
often lead to very unexpected insights that these people might really benefit from.
otherwise not. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And so aristocrats had access.
yeah.
I think it was French aristocrats had access to these garden hermits. And so that's what I call my on my server. That's what I call my patrons. I call them the garden hermits. We have a little special section.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is
It's just a
a
reminder.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a way of dealing with that with humor because at the end of the day, you would have been kind of like a slave to some kind of rich person. But
Well, but that's not always. That's what's so
yeah,
crazy. I
yeah,
mean, that's exploitive, of course, but
yeah,
like I always talk about time and place, right? If you get the right schizo or the right autist in the right time, place, and context, that you can turn that person into a celebrity
yeah,
or a scientifically renowned genius because they had the right special interest at the right time during the right moment,
yeah, yeah,
and they were given the resources to chase that dream, right? And because they had practical or pragmatic reasons for that thing that oftentimes didn't run in kind with why that person, that odd genius or whatever, was even going after that, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
plenty of scientists that have produced things with little to no interest in what they were implemented for ultimately,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
Or they
Tesla.
were misimplemented. Yeah,
Yeah,
or they were misimplemented, right? Tesla is a great example, right? And he was and that's what's so funny. Like, there's a lot of people within the scientific community historically that you could have definitely have gone, oh, they were probably autistic, or they were probably schizospectrum, because
yeah,
one of my favorite examples of a schizospectrum scientist, that ultimately things didn't go so good for him and he didn't exactly make the best choices in life. I can't remember his name right now, but the rocket scientist, the guy who's erased from NASA history, um, the
it's not. It's
the
not von Braun. It's. I think I made a video
yeah,
about
yeah,
him once. The
he was an
occultist.
occultist. Yeah, the
Yeah.
occultist
Fuck.
rocket scientist.
Yeah. Let me. You
And
you say some more
yeah,
words, and I will find this out in
no,
a
for
matter
sure.
of in
Yeah,
like under a minute.
it's the occultist
Jack
rocket.
Parsons. That was
Yeah,
his
Jack
name.
Parsons.
Yeah.
So he had a special interest in rocket science, but his rocket science interest was associated to a lot of kind of schizospectrum, loose associative stuff, right? He was thinking rocket science leads to this and this, and it's connected to this, and so on and so forth. But he was amazing in his work and his in the experimental, as well as the obsessiveness, and as well as the somewhat dangerous and haphazard approach he would
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
doing this sort of stuff, led to a lot of the information and data that ultimately created something like NASA. But a guy like this was so eccentric, so odd, yet so useful, that eventually, once he got too odd, they dropped him. Right?
Yeah.
They were like, "Fuck this guy," because he got into he got into like Crowley and the Golden Dawn and all kinds of stuff. And so it's interesting, right? Where this same guy to be kind of were the same guy to have grown up in an environment that was a little probably healthier for him, perhaps it might have not gone down the same way. And you would have had a guy that would have still actively been participating in and
Yeah.
actively working toward rocket science, NASA, space related projects
Yeah.
and things like that, instead of going off to some
Perhaps
other stuff like
even.
have orgies and shit.
Yeah. I mean, I orgies are
Well, I
great.
mean, there's nothing wrong with those, but I'm
Perhaps
saying
even.
he would have been like, it would have been orgies on a rocket ship.
Yeah.
See, that would have.
I mean, perhaps even ironically, someone who would be, even in the neurotypical sense of the word, more well adjusted because he would have received the kind of like positive social feedback and the acceptance for the eccentricities that he needed in order to like be happy. Like that
Yeah,
space
to
needs to be,
feel
yeah,
something, right?
yeah,
With schizoids, they often think they don't need those things at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
And I can understand why they end up that way, because there's nothing that's really being provided out there for them that would make them think they would want it,
yeah,
right? And until you create a space in which they can see something that can provide said thing, they're generally going to feel that way. And that's kind of what my project and a lot of the stuff I do has been doing, right? I actually recently, I don't know if I told you, but I recently started on paper, not quite anything yet, a nonprofit organization.
hell
Uh,
yes,
and so, like I said, it requires funding and all that sort of stuff. But and I'm gonna get it tax exempt pretty soon here. But I got the tax ID, I got all that shit. But it's gonna be called. It's very corpo sounding. It's gonna be called uh, um, sorry, the Streamlining Cognitive Partnerships.
damn, that just sounds like a cult almost. It's like you're associated with
Yeah,
Scientology.
no, but streamlining, but essentially the shorthand SCP.
Oh my,
So
genius.
yeah, so it's SCP, and so like people that would take part of it will be SCPs. Um, so it's just a little fun joke for me, but it's also something fun, for the community a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah, streamlining cognitive partnerships. Essentially, the idea is going to be a group that's advocating to mostly focus schizospectrum stuff, not just schizoid, but schizospectrum advocacy, understanding, research. I will eventually fundraise enough money to where I can actually offer things like grants
yeah,
to the right people within the say the neuroscience community and otherwise to investigate some of these questions I have, in using whatever methods that they want to use. Because, like I said, I'm not looking for answers I want to hear. I'm looking for actual answers, and I know that the answers I'm getting, they're fucked up and they're not working. So, and that's provable that it's not fucking working. And so yeah, I have a lot of dumb theories and ideas, and I'm not a scientist. STEM field is not my thing. Even though I do a lot of reading, it's still not my official thing. I want to find people that, they're arbitrarily given pieces of paper to go ahead and do research, so that I can gain my social credit score in regards to this can increase. So, and because that's the only way to do it. Money and social capital are the only way to. Well, I mean, but that's a thing. If you say unfortunately, you might just be a schizo. But
everyone who doesn't like capitalism is.
No, I mean no, but even in that sense, even when I talk to like people that are like communist or socialist, because I don't talk to everybody. Like what's really really funny is like a lot of their reasoning and motivation is still very much interpersonal.
Yeah,
and very much like it sounds like it's really meta, but it's not. Like fundamentally, the motivation for it is very much interpersonal, much like local community based, family based. Like this societal thing will increase and benefit those I care about and myself. Is still like one of the primary motivating factors. Even if the literature doesn't necessarily say it, but you can tell when you talk to them about it. In many cases, like it's just funny to me. Like another very small example, and I've gotten. This is like not edgy. I would say it's kind of a hot take because, especially with the climate right now, is I asked this question. I go, okay, so imagine a person during, say, at the appropriate time, talking 70s, 60s, a civil rights activist, right, in America, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just say even more so, a black woman, right? And imagine that they're already a black woman, so being black, they're already ostracized and separated from the general populace in a variety of ways, right? Segregated. And then if they're a woman, there's at those times, especially if we're talking 60s, you're going to have a situation in which they're being kind of segregated from the very movement that is supposed to be they're wanting to participate in, which will ultimately, be something useful for their community and stuff, right? Yeah. So they're already being segregated by the men. They're already being ostracized by the larger community, right? Now, add one more element to it. Now you have a autistic black woman.
Yeah.
Right? Now that autistic black woman is going to be segregated and ostracized by her fellow women.
Yeah.
They're already being segregated and ostracized by the men, which are being segregated and ostracized by the larger community as a whole. So it's a really, really difficult conversation. And I think a lot of it is not about like focusing on things like, obviously, like things like oppression and because like things like oppression for me are like very much a resource accumulation, a resource gathering, weighing, measuring, risk management, as well as like you know what I'm saying? It's very much like tribalistic, very much human. Yeah. And it's just like you have things we don't have. That's not fair because of these reasons. But what's funny is when it comes to like the way down person, there. Well, I mean, how do I put this? I think it's a metacognitive issue. All of this is a metacognitive issue, right? In my mind, everything is a lack of metacognition being taught as a skill, and because there's no reason to teach it to the average person. Because if you're neurotypical, there's no reason to be that metacognitive.
Yeah, but I mean, in a sense, it would benefit society if they did learn that.
Yes, because it would benefit society in a multitude of fashions.
Yeah,
and I think if they can't, I mean, the problem is, and this is the black pill for me, if they can't even metacognate out of like something like a culture or race,
yeah,
how the fuck are they going to do it for cognition in itself?
I mean, that's kind
right?
of the intersectional
That's just
approach.
depressing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no, but that's depressing to me because it's just
it
like,
really
wow.
is.
No, yeah, it depresses the living shit out of me because I'm like, what chances do the autists and the fucking schizos have,
Yeah,
and what kind of fight are we gonna have to put up if humans have trouble just metacognating out of what seems to me a very simple, pathetically simple thing such as race
yeah,
and gender,
yeah,
like I see stuff like race and gender, and I just go, wow, this is the conversation we're having. Like
yeah,
humans are pathetic. Like this is depressing. Like that, this is what we're stuck on, right? And it's just really really funny because a lot of the schizos I talk to, they kind of feel the same way. They just go, man, this is all they care about. Like they're having like existential questions about like what humanity needs to seek in order to like find some peace in human suffering or some shit.
yeah.
And they all have different theories and ideas, and they're all unique in their position. But instead, all we see on TV and everywhere else is like all this concentration in culture war shit, and it hurts. It hurts to watch because it's just like, yo, we're all just suffering. Can you stop?
Yeah, it's something that
Like,
makes me very often like want to just check out of politics and the cultural discourse because I'm like,
yeah,
this, I fuck, but I also personally I feel
but
like it's getting better, but I often feel this way, even when I have
yeah,
no
but
reason to.
that might just be your mania though.
Yeah. Anyway,
Kidding.
we are pretty much out. I
Yeah,
mean,
we're
I
out of
don't. I
time.
decide
We're out
how
of
long
time.
the time is at the end of the day, but I'm
Yeah,
saying we are pretty much out of time, and we
it means
could
you're bored and tired.
doom spiral for hours more. I have one final question for you to end
Yeah,
this on a
yeah,
more
absolutely.
positive
I don't
note.
consider that. I don't even consider that doom spiraling, honestly. But yeah, but I
What
get it.
is friendship to you?
Okay, so friendship to me is a respecting of mutual agency, a respecting of mutual opinion, interest. In other words, like being able to be with one another without hurting one another,
Yeah,
and without being hurt all the time,
yeah,
or having assumptions be made on the part of the other person, like inferences be made, and just questions be asked,
yeah,
right? So if I'm a friend with somebody and they say something that like triggers me, like or upsets some defense of mine, I will say, "Hey, this is triggering a specific defense of mine. I can feel it. Can you like can we discuss this further, or can you elaborate on what you meant?" Or I'll ask, "Do you mean this?"
yeah,
And then they will say, "No, I did not mean that. I meant this."
yeah,
And then I'll go, "Okay." And so having this kind of open dialogue and transparency, not about obviously private information or I want to know everything about you or any shit like that, but more of on a conversational way, in a way that allows us to feel like the other person isn't doing some shady, weird bullshit or passive aggressive nonsense, and
yeah,
feeling comfortable enough to where you can just be like openly vulnerable to a certain degree that you're comfortable with that person. So for me, friendship is that ability to do that and be okay with it. Right? It's not we see each other. Not am I actively asking you all the time if you're okay or what you need. It's not. It's not a bunch of polite gestures and agreeing or validating of my perspectives, right, or
yeah,
feelings or biases. It's talking about those things openly and transparently, and not the any kind of or too many at least bad faith assumptions on the part of the other human being you're in,
yeah.
and they can do the same for you because both of you are acting in that relationship or in that friendship in good faith. So kind of like I would consider Berg a friend. So
Thank you. I
yeah.
would consider you a friend as well. This is very
I mean,
sweet.
we're not close friends, but we're
Yeah,
friends.
well, like
we're,
internet
but
friends essentially.
internet, yeah, but you're one of the good you're one of the good ones. No, I'm kidding. No, no, but no, but as if you were fucking neurotypical anyway. But but
Yeah, I am not.
but you aren't, definitely not. But that's probably why we get along. But in any case, yeah, that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah,
So I think for me, that's what friendship is. And that big long-winded, I don't have to do that big long-winded explanation to another person that gets it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they just get it.
Yeah.
And we just do it, and it's intuitive.
Hell yeah.
And if they don't get it and it's not intuitive for them, that's probably a person that I can't be friends with. It doesn't mean I can't be amicable, but I can't be friends with, right? Like I can't be close friends with, and I don't care about having a lot of friends. That shit's stupid to me. It's fucking dumb. Quality over quantity, always.
You managed to drag it down again to like the last few words. Very, very excellent in that department.
Quality over quantity? Yeah, absolutely.
Tremendous.
So I guess that's it.
I enjoyed this very much. What is some stuff that you want to like pitch? You have the platform of like however many subscribers I have right at the point at which someone is seeing this video.
Okay, cool. All right. So go to my YouTube channel, Schizoid Angst. Just type Schizoid Angst. I'm not gonna give you the fucking link over speech. So just go there. If you type it in, you'll find it. I think it's like one of the top, I guess, schizoid channels. Wow, not saying much with 2K subs or almost 2K subs. Which, for honestly, considering how niche the subject is, it's not too bad. At least I have a Discord server for schizoids, more specifically called the Zoid Void. You can go on Disboard and find it there, or you can click on the link on my YouTube channel, or maybe possibly the link that Krieg will maybe put down there.
Yeah, I will put both.
Remember? And if you are, thank you. And any kind of support is always nice. PayPal, Patreon, any of that stuff. I have all those things. And I do a Twitch stream too. So that I switched my streams over to Twitch because it's just far more stream friendly. And so I do my videos on YouTube or uploads on YouTube, and I do my stream on Twitch. And that's under, again, Schizoid Angst. And you can listen to me there. I do Tuesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturday and Sundays. I'll be doing one tonight. But, by the time this uploads, that won't matter. But usually Saturdays or Sunday nights at 7 p.m. PST. So, and we can talk. And I act like a crazy person sometimes, and I sometimes get drunk on streams and sometimes bad. And so I don't say anything on stream. I just like play music and just be sad. And sometimes I have long-winded conversations with people. It just depends. I try to be, like I said, very transparent with my viewers. What's happening with me, because it's kind of stupid. I'm not going to mask in front of them because that defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah, that's not really the point.
All right, so if I'm having a shit day, you're going to see me having a shit day. I don't care if that's boring.
I respect that, actually. I like I don't like the general, like, being a public figure, a persona of a public figure thing. I don't like that. I don't think that's good for society.
I'll lose my mind. I'll lose my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway. Unless that public figure is, like, intentionally funny. Like something like J-Reg. And it's pretty. Then I'm okay. If you're trolling with your public figure, I'm downtown for that.
Hell
all right.
Yeah.
I guess that's it. Thanks, Krieg, for having me. Right.
Yeah. Thank you for being on. Thank you for being the first guest on this beautiful experiment of mine. Yeah. This
first and last.
I'm trying. I'm gonna try and do more of these. I have a few ideas.
I'm just waiting for the message after like 2 days. Hey, you know what? I thought this is gonna work out. I thought this was a cool idea.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely uploading this.
Hey, do you mind uploading it to your channel? I'm kind of embarrassed about it.
Hell yeah. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. And in that spirit, if you have any questions with regards to like schizoid stuff, and if you feel like maybe you can relate to these experiences a little more than you might necessarily feel comfortable with given your current self-image, go check out the channels and the resources down in the description. You might be.
I'm on Twitter too.
Yeah, and the Twitter. You might be in for a journey of self-discovery, and see you around.
Or just a complete shit mess.
That too. That could also happen.